He didn't just end a marriage. He stood up in a glittering private dining room, under crystal chandeliers and in front of more than 20 guests, and pointed at his pregnant wife like she was a stain on his perfect life. He called her cheap, said she was an embarrassment, and threw divorce papers across the polished table, while his co-workers laughed awkwardly and his mistress, seated 3 tables away, pretending to be just another colleague, tried not to smile. That night, Elena Rivers, who everyone at that table thought was just the quiet wife from the poor side of town, felt her throat close as every eye turned to watch her break. Her back ached from the weight of the child she carried. Her hands shook as she tried to wipe her tears without smudging the one good dress she could afford. Marcus, her husband, rolled his eyes, told her she had been a mistake, and signaled for the waiter as if he had only spilled a drink, not destroyed a family. He thought she would go home to nothing. He thought she had no power. He thought humiliating her in front of his world would erase her from his future. What he never knew was this: the woman he had just shamed was not just a wife he'd outgrown. She was the hidden daughter of billionaire investor Charles Harrington, a man who had died 2 years ago, but left behind quiet contracts and legal triggers tied to her DNA, her marriage certificate, and very specific conditions. While Marcus topped off his wine and leaned closer to watch his new woman from across the room, 3 guests were already recording on their phones, and a lawyer who had been monitoring Marcus's behavior for 6 months opened a locked file with both their names on it. As Elena stepped out into the cold night whispering, "I just want my baby safe," a calm voice rang through her phone and addressed her by the name she had buried since her father's death. "Miss Harrington, the protections your father arranged have been triggered. It's time." From that moment, this was no longer a story about a powerless, discarded wife. It became a quiet war, a war of old contracts, frozen accounts, courtroom silence, and a downfall Marcus Hale never imagined when he chose to disgrace her. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Elena's voice fade back into that dining room humiliation. When you click that button, you stand with every woman mocked in public, every child almost born into fear, and every quiet heart that decided to rise. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. 3 years ago, Elena Rivers was the kind of woman people described as soft but unbreakably steady. At just 22, she worked double shifts at a small community bookstore on Maple Avenue, living in a creaking 2-bedroom rental with peeling paint and humming radiators on the west side of town. She wore thrifted sweaters, packed leftover sandwiches for lunch, and saved every extra dollar she could. Her world was modest, grounded, predictable, but peaceful. She believed in kindness the way some people believed in destiny, fully, blindly, without hesitation. Back then, Elena supported more people than anyone ever supported her. Her father, billionaire investor Charles Harrington, had raised her far from cameras and luxury until his sudden death from a heart attack 2 years ago, when she had just turned 23. Before he died, he insisted his children learn resilience without leaning on the family name. Elena embraced that humility so deeply that few people knew she was an heiress at all. She lived simply, happily, obeying her father's final instruction, written into his will and explained by his attorney: never reveal your inheritance until you turn 30, unless you are publicly abandoned, endangered, or humiliated by a spouse. And she carried that secret effortlessly because 3 years ago, she thought she had found love worth hiding everything for. That was the year she met Marcus Hale. He wasn't the polished, high-income executive he would later become. He lived in a tiny studio above a bakery on 4th Street, where the smell of rising dough drifted through the cracked window at sunrise. His mattress sagged, his shoes were scuffed, and ambition hung off him like a coat that didn't quite fit yet. But he had a boyish grin and hopeful eyes, and at that time, that was enough for Elena. She would sit beside him at a $40 thrift store table after her bookstore shifts, helping him rewrite resumes, rehearse interview questions, and apply for jobs until her eyes blurred. She believed in his potential more fiercely than he believed in himself, and slowly, painfully, her quiet devotion became the foundation of his future. What Elena didn't know was that her father's attorney, Cole Winters, had been watching. Charles Harrington had required that any man who married his daughter sign a protective prenuptial agreement disguised as standard legal documentation. Marcus, eager and naive, signed every page without reading carefully. The contract contained a clause: if the husband publicly humiliates, abandons, or causes measurable distress to Elena Harrington Rivers, 35% of all his future earnings for 10 years will be redirected to her, plus misconduct penalties. 2 years ago, Marcus landed his first real client through networking Elena had helped arrange. Money trickled in, then flowed. With every paycheck, something in him rearranged. Compliments turned to corrections. You talk too softly. You dress too plain. You won't fit in with the people I'm meeting now. Corrections turned to criticism. Don't embarrass me. You need to elevate yourself if you want to stand beside me. Elena didn't recognize it as emotional distance yet. She thought it was stress, ambition, growth. She wanted to be patient. But 6 months ago, the day she revealed she was pregnant, she saw the truth. No smile, no excitement. Just a sharp inhale and a cold question. Are you sure this is the right time? For me? It was the first fracture she couldn't ignore. The moment she realized the man she fell in love with no longer existed. And now, present day a Thursday in late November, while she lives quietly in her same modest 2-bedroom rental on the west side of town, counting every dollar and every bruise on her heart, Marcus lives in a new world, one she helped him build. A loft in East Crest Heights overlooking a private marina. 5 tailored Armani suits lined up like trophies. A marble bar stocked with $300 whiskey. A matte black Mercedes S-Class with his initials engraved in the key fob. He left humility behind the moment money found him, but not before she had sacrificed years of her life to help him rise. And even now, as she stands barefoot in her kitchen, staring at a humming fridge holding 3 eggs, half a gallon of milk, a bruised apple, and a $340 doctor's bill tucked behind a jar of peanut butter, she still doesn't complain. She presses a hand to her stomach, whispers to her unborn child, and tells herself it will be okay. She believes she's alone. What she doesn't know is that her father's legal protections, silent, patient, waiting, are about to be triggered the moment Marcus crosses one final line. And attorney Cole Winters has been quietly documenting every cruel word Marcus has said for the past 6 months, waiting for the legal threshold to be met. Now, on this quiet Thursday morning, Elena sat at the edge of her small living room couch, the one with the faded blue fabric that had started to fray along the seams. The weak light slipping through her beige blinds made everything look softer than it really was. The air smelled faintly of detergent drifting up from the laundromat downstairs, mixing with the untouched coffee cooling on her table. Her lower back ached the way it always did lately, a slow pulsing reminder of the little life growing inside her. And beneath all of that, beneath the tiredness, the hunger, the morning stillness was a knot of fear she didn't want to name. She stood slowly, hand on her belly for balance, and crossed the room to reheat last night's leftover rice. The microwave hummed louder than usual, almost like it was protesting the work. When she opened the fridge, she saw the same thing she always saw. 3 eggs, half a gallon of milk, a bruised apple, and a doctor's bill tucked behind a jar of peanut butter. The total was $340. She had exactly $230.47 left in her personal bank account. The joint account with Marcus held more her grandmother's $12,000 inheritance, plus their shared savings, but he'd changed the access requirements 3 weeks ago, claiming it was for security purposes. She'd need his approval to withdraw anything now. She hadn't fought it then. She should have. It was a little after 8:12 a.m., 4 days before the corporate dinner Marcus had mentioned last week, the one he said would determine his future. She didn't know it yet, but that dinner would break something in her that could never be repaired. Her phone rang. Marcus. His name alone made her throat tighten. She pressed answer. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked softly. His voice came through cold and clipped. "Be ready by 6 Saturday. Dress decently. Important dinner. Don't make me wait." "Saturday?" she whispered. "That's the client dinner you mentioned? For who? For people who matter?" He snapped, then hung up. She stared at the phone for a long moment, feeling the faint kick of her baby against her ribs, like even the child sensed tension. Later, she would remember this call as the first public crack in the mask he wore for everyone else, but she would also realize he'd been practicing cruelty in private for months. A knock at the door pulled her back. Before she could answer, the door swung open and Tasha stepped in, carrying 2 bulging grocery bags. Tasha, 28, and sharp-tongued in the way only a best friend could be, still wore Navy scrubs from her overnight shift at County General Hospital. Her curls were tied in a messy bun, and she had that look, the one that meant she already knew something was wrong. "Girl, I brought food," Tasha said, nudging the door closed with her hip. I swear, if I find nothing but air in that fridge again. There's food, Elena murmured. Tasha opened the fridge anyway. 3 eggs, a bruised apple, and milk don't count as food. And that rice from last night? That's survival, not living. She pulled out a carton of strawberries and a small rotisserie chicken. These were on sale, $12 total. Treat yourself. Elena took them reluctantly. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Tasha set the bags down and glanced at the phone in Elena's hand. Was that him again? He wants me at a dinner Saturday night. He wants you silent and dressed up like a prop, Tasha said. I heard his tone from across the room. He talks to you like your staff, not his pregnant wife. He's stressed, Elena said quickly. Big clients. It's just a phase. Tasha's eyebrows shot up. A phase, Elena. He talked to you nicer when he was broke and sleeping on a futon above that bakery. Her words hit harder than Elena expected. She turned away, pretending to wash the single plate she had dirtied. Her hands shook. The water was warm, but her fingers felt cold. As she scrubbed, she noticed a small scratch along her wedding ring. It was thin, almost invisible, but she knew it wasn't there a few months ago. The scratch made her remember, suddenly and painfully, the day he bought the ring. Back then, they had stood in a tiny jewelry shop on Broad Street, the kind with dim lights and dusty display cases. Marcus had squeezed her hand and whispered, "It's just a placeholder until I make it big." His smile had been warm then, hopeful. She had believed him. He never replaced it. The memory faded when the baby rolled gently beneath her ribs, reminding her she needed to stay present. Her phone buzzed again, a reminder for her virtual appointment with Dr. Lin, scheduled for 9 a.m. Tasha pulled up a chair beside her as the screen flickered to life. Dr. Lin's calm, steady voice filled the room. Elena, your tests show mild anemia, the doctor said. You need more rest, more iron. And please, avoid stress if you can. Tasha snorted softly. You hear that? Doctor's orders. Avoid your husband. Elena covered the mic, whispering, Tasha, stop. But her friend only shook her head. One day, that man's mouth is going to ruin him. I'm telling you. She had no idea someone else was already documenting every word he said. After the call ended, Tasha reached out and held Elena's arm. Talk to me. What's this dinner about? Why is he suddenly obsessed with you looking decent? I don't know, Elena said. He barely talks to me lately. Maybe he just wants support. Support? Tasha scoffed. For what? Embarrassing you in public again? Elena felt her chest tighten. The memory from last month burned hot in her mind, Marcus rolling his eyes at her for mispronouncing a client's name. It's pronounced Bouvier, not Bovie, he'd hissed across the table. At a casual restaurant meetup with potential investors, then later telling her in the car, you make me look uneducated when you can't even get basic names right. Do you know how that reflects on me? She had swallowed her shame then, hoping it was just a bad night. Maybe Saturday will be better, she said. But even she didn't believe the words. Tasha folded her arms. If I were you, I'd be ready for anything. Men like Marcus don't suddenly invite their wives to important dinners unless they're planning something. Elena frowned. Planning what? I don't know yet, Tasha muttered. But I have a bad feeling. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Marcus lit the screen. Wear something expensive. Don't embarrass me. Elena stared at the words until they blurred. Her hands trembled. She didn't know it yet, but this dinner would become the stage for her rebirth. And somewhere in the city, Attorney Cole Winters was reviewing surveillance reports from a private investigator he'd hired 6 months ago. Reports that documented every restaurant Marcus visited with a young woman named Leela Chen, every late-night text, every lie. The legal threshold was almost met. The next time she saw Marcus, the mask he wore for everyone else would slip a little more. The little bell above the thrift shop door jingled softly as Elena stepped inside on Friday afternoon, the sound echoing in the narrow, dim space. The air smelled like old perfume and dust, the kind that settled into clothes and memories. Soft 90 seconds pop played from a radio behind the counter, a gentle soundtrack that felt almost too cheerful for the heaviness pressing against her chest. She rubbed her belly once, trying to quiet the uneasy flutter there. She had come here to find something simple, something she could wear without shame tomorrow night. But even stepping into this store reminded her of how small her world had become. Rows of clothing racks stretched in crooked lines around her, their metal bars squeaking whenever she moved a hanger. She tried to steady her breathing. Her back still ached from the morning, and a faint buzzing had settled behind her ears, part stress, part exhaustion. It was a little after 2:14 p.m., one day before the dinner she already feared. Her bank app still showed the same $230.47. The fridge at home still held 3 eggs and that bruised apple waiting to be eaten. The doctor's bill was still tucked behind the peanut butter jar, as if hiding it might make it easier to pay. She reached for a navy dress hanging near the end of a rack. It was soft, simple, and the price tag made her throat tighten. $16. She turned it in her hands, imagining whether Marcus would say it looked presentable enough. She wondered why she cared so much about his approval anymore. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She opened it hesitantly. "Elena, this is Sandra from Marcus's office. We met briefly at the holiday party last year. I need to talk to you about something important. Can you call me?" Elena's pulse quickened. She didn't remember Sandra well, just a friendly face in a crowd of Marcus's co-workers. Why would she be reaching out now? Before she could respond, someone tapped her shoulder. "Elena, what are you doing here?" She turned to see Tasha standing behind her, still in her navy scrubs from the morning shift, holding a grocery bag in one hand and a half-finished iced coffee in the other. A tired, worried look crossed her friend's face. "Don't tell me he gave you money for a dress," Tasha said, eyes narrowing, "because we both know he didn't." "No," Elena said softly. "I just thought, maybe something simple. Something simple for a dinner with people who probably eat gold flakes on their steak." Tasha scoffed. "Girl, please." Elena bit her lip, trying not to crumble. "I just want to look decent." "Decent for who? For a man who barely looks at you these days." "Tasha." Her friend set down her coffee and grabbed the dress from Elena's hands, studying it. "It's nice," she admitted softly. "But why are you shaking?" "I'm fine," Elena murmured, but her hands were trembling. She tried to hide them in the folds of the dress. "Someone from Marcus's office just texted me. Sandra. She said she needs to talk." "Oh, that's comforting," Tasha muttered. "What did she say?" "Just that, it's important." "Important how?" "I don't know. Should I call her back?" Tasha pulled out her own phone. "Let me see the number." She studied it for a moment, then nodded. "It matches the office directory from when I dropped off lunch for you last year." "It's legit." She handed the phone back. "Call her. Right now." Elena's finger hovered over the number. Her heart thudded. Finally, she pressed call. The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered, slightly breathless. "Elena? Thank God. I wasn't sure you'd call back." Sandra's voice answered, slightly breathless. "Elena? Thank God. I wasn't sure you'd call back." "Sandra?" Elena asked. "What's going on?" There was a pause. Elena could hear office noise in the background, keyboards clicking, muffled voices. Then Sandra spoke quietly, as if she didn't want to be overheard. "Elena, I don't know how to say this gently, so I'm just going to be direct. I've been Marcus's executive assistant for 3 years now. I schedule his meetings, book his travel, process his expense reports. I see everything that comes through his calendar and credit cards. Everything. And what I've been seeing lately," she paused, "Marcus has been bringing someone to client dinners, a woman named Lila Chen. She's a junior marketing consultant, late 20s. And Elena, he introduces her as his partner." The air left Elena's lungs. Tasha, who had been listening closely, mouthed, "Put it on speaker." Elena tapped the button. Sandra continued, her voice trembling slightly. "At first, I thought maybe it was just professional. But last week, I saw them leaving a restaurant together. His hand was on her lower back. And yesterday at the office, I overheard him on a phone call. He said something like, 'After Saturday, everything will be settled. Clean break.'" Elena felt the words like a slap. Her chest tightened, buzzing in her ears growing louder. He told me the dinner tomorrow was just for clients." "It is," Sandra said, "but she'll be there. And Elena, I think he's planning something. I don't know what, but the way he's been acting, it doesn't feel right." Tasha stepped closer, her expression dark. "Sandra, why are you telling her this?" There was a long pause. "Because it's not right. Elena helped him when he had nothing. She doesn't deserve this." Elena's throat burned. "Thank you for calling," she whispered. Be careful tomorrow, Sandra said. And Elena, if you need anything documentation, witness statements, call me. The call ended. Silence filled the thrift shop, heavy and thick. Elena leaned against the nearest rack, covering her face with both hands. Her chest felt heavy, her ears buzzed, her whole body trembled. Tasha placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Why do you let him do this to you? I don't know, Elena whispered. I just want things to be okay before the baby comes. Okay for him, Tasha corrected. Never for you. Elena didn't argue. She couldn't. Before another word could pass between them, a car rolled past the thrift shop window, sleek, black, unmistakable. Marcus's matte black Mercedes S-Class. Her breath froze. He didn't see her. He didn't even glance toward the shop. He just drove by, focused on whatever world he now lived in, a world she no longer recognized herself in. And in the passenger seat, barely visible through the tinted window, sat a young woman with dark hair. Lila. Elena's heart dropped. You see that? Tasha whispered. He doesn't even think you could be in a place like this. To him, you're not worth noticing anymore. Elena swallowed hard. Maybe he's just giving a coworker a ride. Girl, Tasha stared at her. Stop defending him. The dress slipped from Elena's fingers and fell to the floor. She thought the tear in the seam of her life was small. The truth was much bigger. And tomorrow night, her whole world would shift. But what Elena didn't know was that across town, in a quiet law office on 7th Street, Attorney Cole Winters was reviewing the latest report from his private investigator, photographs of Marcus and Lila entering a hotel 3 nights ago, time-stamped and documented. The legal threshold had finally been met. Now on this restless Friday night, Elena stood in her small kitchen, the dim overhead bulb flickering like it was tired too. The air carried the smell of garlic drifting through the wall from her neighbor's apartment, warm and comforting in a way her home no longer felt. Her feet ached from standing, her back throbbed with a slow, stubborn pressure, and a faint buzzing filled her ears. Shame sat in her chest like a stone she couldn't swallow. She held the navy thrift store dress against her body, having just finished sewing the small tear in the seam. She wondered if maybe, just maybe, it would be enough for tomorrow. But the truth pressed on her. She didn't have $60 for a nicer one. She didn't even have $20 to spare. Her bank balance was still $230.47. It was now around 7:42 p.m., less than 24 hours before the dinner she already feared. Tomorrow would change too much. She didn't know it yet, but this night would be the last time she ever apologized for simply existing. The front door opened suddenly. Marcus stepped in without knocking, as if the apartment still belonged to him. He'd officially moved out 3 months ago to his new loft in East Crest Heights, but he'd kept a key, a detail she'd been too exhausted to fight about. He wore a charcoal blazer, expensive cologne, and an expression that made her stomach twist. Elena, he said, eyes scanning her from head to toe. What are you wearing tomorrow? She held up the dress, trying to smile. I thought this might be okay. It's simple, but you can't wear that. He grabbed the fabric between 2 fingers, as if it were dirty. It looks cheap. The word landed like a slap. Her throat tightened. Before she could speak, the baby kicked hard, a sharp jolt beneath her ribs. Even the child inside her seemed to feel the tension. Inside her mind, a softer memory flickered Marcus 2 years ago, holding her hands in their tiny apartment and whispering, "When I make it big, I'll take care of you forever." His eyes had been warm then, full of hope. She used to believe those promises. She once thought he meant every word. That warmth was gone now. "Marcus, it's all I could find," she said quietly. We don't have what?" he snapped. "Standards? Do you know who's going to be at this dinner? Investors, senior partners, people who decide my future." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. "And you want to show up looking like someone's charity case?" Her heart thudded painfully, palms trembling. She hated how small she felt around him now, like she was shrinking inch by inch under the weight of his voice. "Why are you being like this?" she whispered. "Because image matters," he said. "And tomorrow is the most important night of my career. You can't show up looking like someone's maid." A sharp inhale came from the hallway. Tasha appeared in the doorway, still in her scrubs, hair tied back, eyes blazing. She must have used the spare key Elena had given her months ago. "Excuse me? You want to repeat that?" she asked, stepping forward. Marcus stiffened. Stay out of married people's business. Then treat your wife like a wife, Tasha shot back. Not like trash on your shoe. Elena rushed between them, hands shaking. Please don't. I don't want to fight. Marcus glared at her like she was the one embarrassing him. Why is she even here? Because she cares, Elena whispered. That's more than I can say for you, Tasha snapped. Tasha, stop, Elena said. But the words came out small, weak. Another contraction of fear tightened inside her chest. Why did she always defend him? Why did her body always turn cold when his voice rose? Marcus leaned in, lowering his tone but not the anger. I swear, Elena, if you show up tomorrow wearing that, if you open your mouth at the wrong time and say something stupid like you did at the Hendersons' dinner, you'll embarrass me in front of Aunt A. People who actually matter, and I won't forget it. He didn't know it, but someone else would later hear these exact words. Tasha's jaw clenched. She slipped her phone from her pocket, tapping the screen once. A tiny red dot appeared near the top corner recording. Elena didn't notice. She was too focused on keeping her tears from falling. Girl, Tasha whispered to her, you need proof of how he talks to you. One day this will matter. Elena felt her heart flip. Stop, please. Don't stir things up. I'm not stirring anything, Tasha murmured. He's doing that all by himself. Marcus scoffed, stepping back toward the door. Tomorrow, just stay quiet and don't embarrass me. That's all you need to do. Can you manage that? The baby kicked again, harder this time. A symbolic pain, a warning, a response. Her eyes stung, but she held the tears in. She didn't want him to see her cry. Not tonight. Marcus, can we talk? Just calmly? She tried. There's nothing to talk about, he said, grabbing his keys. Just follow directions for once. Then he walked out, the door slamming behind him at exactly 9:02 p.m. The sound echoing through the apartment like a final judgment. Silence filled the room, heavy and thick. Elena leaned against the counter, covering her face with both hands. Her chest felt heavy, her ears buzzed, her whole body trembled. Tasha stepped close, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Why do you let him talk to you like that? I don't know, Elena whispered. I just want things to be okay before the baby comes. Okay for him, Tasha corrected. Never for you. Elena didn't argue. She couldn't. Tasha held up her phone, the recording still playing silently on the screen. I got every word. Video and audio. Time-stamped. She paused it and saved the file. Just in case. If Elena had walked away from Marcus months ago, everything would have stayed hidden. This night could have been the end of the pain. Instead, it became the beginning of the truth. Her phone buzzed on the counter, making both women jump. A message popped up from Sandra. Please meet me before the dinner tomorrow. 4 p.m. at Riverside Cafe on 3rd. There's something you need to know. I have proof. Elena stared at the screen, her heart pounding louder than the neighbor's TV through the walls. Tomorrow, the masks would fall. And she had no idea how deep the cracks already were. But across town, in a modest law office, Attorney Cole Winters received an encrypted email from his private investigator. The subject line read, 3 Shold met, Harrington clause activated. He opened the email. Inside were photographs, transcripts, and a video file timestamped from tonight. Marcus's voice captured through Elena's open window by the investigator stationed outside. Cole picked up his phone and drafted a message to Elena, one he'd been instructed by her late father to send only when the legal conditions were fully satisfied. He didn't send it yet. He would wait for one more piece of evidence, the dinner. Elena was already gripping the edge of the cafe table when Sandra slid into the booth across from her, eyes darting toward the door as if someone might follow her inside. The smell of espresso and warm pastries filled the air, but Elena's stomach felt too tight to enjoy any of it. A low hum of chatter surrounded them, soft enough to hide the trembling in her hands, but not the fear rising in her throat. It was just after 4:20 p.m. on Saturday when Sandra arrived at Riverside Cafe. Elena had come early, too anxious to wait at home. The evening of the dinner loomed only a few hours away. Marcus had told her to be ready by 6 p.m. sharp. Her back throbbed again, the baby shifting restlessly as if sensing the storm coming. Sandra, about 30 with honey-colored hair usually worn in a sleek ponytail, looked exhausted today. Her hair was tied into a messy bun, strands falling out as she leaned forward. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Elena, thank you for meeting me, she whispered. What's going on? Elena asked. Your message said you have proof of something. Sandra swallowed hard, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. I've been working at Marcus's company for 3 years. I've seen a lot of colleagues come and go. But what I've seen in the last 6 months, she trailed off, shaking her head. It's wrong, and you deserve to know. Elena's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside were printed screenshots of text messages, emails, and receipts. Text message dated 2 weeks ago. Lila. So when does she stop being a problem? Marcus. Soon. After the investor dinner, I'll make it clean. Emails dated over 3 months. Subject. Northside Estates private room reservation. Marcus to events coordinator. I'll need seating for 22. My wife will attend but seat her away from the main table. She's not comfortable with large groups. Another text from yesterday. Lila. Are you really going through with it at the dinner? Marcus. It's the perfect setting. Public, professional. She won't cause a scene. Elena felt the room tilt. Her vision blurred. What is he planning? She whispered. Sandra reached over the table and squeezed her hand. I think he's going to serve you divorce papers tonight. In front of everyone. The words hit like ice water. Elena's breath caught. The baby pushed against her ribs a sharp, uncomfortable pressure. Even the child seemed to understand heartbreak. Why would he do that? Elena asked, her voice breaking. In front of people? In public? Sandra's eyes filled with sympathy. Because he thinks it makes him look decisive. Strong. Like he's moving on from something that was holding him back. Some of the senior guys at the firm have been encouraging this kind of image. The whole ruthless businessman persona. Before another word could pass between them, the cafe door opened sharply. Tasha hurried in, still wearing her scrubs from an early shift, carrying a thick folder under her arm. She spotted them immediately and beelined toward the booth. It's 4:47, she said breathlessly as she slid in beside Elena. And girl, you need to see this now. What is it? Elena asked. Tasha opened the folder. More printed screenshots spilled across the table. Photos of Marcus and Lila leaving restaurants together, his hand on her back. A hotel receipt from 3 nights ago. Credit card statements showing jewelry purchases Elena never received. Elena's world tilted further. Where did you get all this? Remember I told you Marcus forgot to log out of his account on the clinic computer last week? Tasha said. Well, he also forgot to log out of his cloud storage. I saw a shared folder called Personal L. See, I shouldn't have looked. But, girl, I'm glad I did. Sandra winced. So it's worse than I thought. Elena picked up one of the receipts with trembling fingers, a $3,200 charge at a jewelry store dated 1 month ago. The description read, Lady's diamond bracelet. She had never seen a bracelet. That sentence dragged her back 2 months, to a night she overheard Marcus on the phone in the apartment. She'd walked in quietly, a hand on her stomach, carrying groceries. She heard him say, She'll understand once I'm established. She always does. At the time, she thought he was talking about a work situation. She never imagined he meant her. The memory faded, leaving her cold. Tasha placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Say the word, Elena. Say you won't go tonight. We'll stay home. We'll eat cheap noodles and watch old movies. Forget him. Sandra nodded quickly. Please don't go. He's not planning kindness. I've seen men like this before. My ex-husband did something similar. Trust me, public humiliation is a control tactic. Elena wiped her tears, her hands shaking. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then quietly but firmly, no. Both women stared. No, Sandra echoed. I need to hear it from him, Elena said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. I need to see who he becomes when he thinks I'm powerless. Because if I don't, I'll always wonder if I misunderstood. If I made it worse by not showing up. A small spark, tiny, but real, flickered in her chest. Tasha swallowed hard. Then at least don't go alone. I'm coming with you. Me too, Sandra said. I'll be there as a colleague. If anything happens, you'll have witnesses. Elena pulled in a breath. Okay. When she stepped outside to call her Uber at 5:15 p.m., the sunlight had already started to dim, the wind carrying the faint smell of coffee beans and car exhaust. Her phone buzzed with the driver's arrival. He rolled down the window, a middle-aged man with kind eyes. Ma'am, I have you going to Northside Estates? That's a fancy area. Big event tonight? Her heart thudded once. Hard. Yes. He hesitated. You okay? You look like you're heading into battle. She almost laughed. Maybe I am. She didn't know it yet, but tonight would pull the mask off Marcus Hale forever. And in a law office across town, attorney Cole Winters received a final encrypted message from his investigator. Target confirmed entering Northside Estates. Multiple devices recording, ready to proceed on your signal. Cole opened the file his late client, Charles Harrington, had prepared 7 years ago contingency plans for exactly this scenario. He picked up his phone and drafted one message. Elena, this is attorney Cole Winters. I represent your late father's estate. Emergency legal protections have been activated. Please call me immediately after tonight's event, no matter how late. You are not alone. He scheduled it to send at 8:30 p.m., and then he waited. Elena hadn't even taken 3 steps into the dining hall before she felt the sting of 100 eyes on her. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead, pouring warm light onto polished wooden tables set with gold-rimmed plates and tall wine glasses. The scent of rosemary steak and buttered rolls drifted through the air, but her stomach twisted too tightly to feel hungry. Her thrift store navy dress felt thinner here, almost see-through under the brightness. She took a slow breath, steadying her hand on her belly. Marcus stood near the center of the long main table, laughing with a group of well-dressed executives. He didn't look at her. Elena scanned the room. Lila sat 3 tables away at what appeared to be the junior staff section, wearing a red silk dress that shimmered beneath the chandelier light. Their eyes met for a split second. Lila looked away quickly, but not before Elena saw something flash across her face, guilt, maybe, or anticipation. Worse, Elena caught the ghost of a smile tugging at Lila's lips before she forced her expression neutral satisfaction poorly disguised as professional indifference. It was around 6:47 p.m. when Elena finally found her assigned seat, not at the main table beside Marcus, where spouses typically sat. Instead, she'd been placed at a side table near the back, between 2 people she didn't recognize. The name card read simply, Mrs. Hale. Tasha and Sandra had entered separately, as planned. Tasha posed as a +1 of a colleague Marcus barely knew. Sandra sat at her usual company table. Both women positioned themselves with clear sightlines to Elena. Marcus finally approached, not to greet her warmly, but to lean down and whisper harshly, You're late. You told me 6, she said. I arrived at 6:35. Everyone important was here by 6:15, he hissed. Try to keep up. He walked away before she could respond. A waiter offered her water. She accepted with trembling hands. Across the room, a young man in a dark vest, Malik Jones, the 26-year-old tech coordinator, Marcus's company, sometimes contracted, stood near the sound equipment, adjusting speaker levels. His laptop bag sat at his feet. Elena had met him once at a holiday party. He'd been kind, quiet, asked if she needed anything. Now he glanced at her with what looked like concern. By 7:18 p.m., the room had grown louder. Laughter, wine pouring, expensive silverware chiming against porcelain. The host, an older executive named Gerald, stood and called for attention. Thank you all for joining us tonight. This is a celebration of our firm's growth and the talented people who've made it possible. Polite applause. Gerald gestured toward Marcus. Marcus Hale has been instrumental this quarter. His client acquisition rate is unprecedented. Marcus, would you like to say a few words? Marcus stood, buttoning his jacket with a practiced smile. Thank you, Gerald. It's been an incredible year. I've learned that success requires focus and sometimes difficult decisions. Elena's heart began to race. Something about his tone felt wrong. I've also learned, Marcus continued, his voice growing colder, that personal baggage can hold you back. That not everyone is equipped to rise with you. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. In the back corner near the sound equipment, Malik quietly angled his phone against his laptop, the small red recording light barely visible in the dim corner. At a side table, Tasha had already pressed record the moment Marcus stood, her phone propped against a centerpiece. Near the entrance, a middle-aged woman, Elena didn't recognize someone's guest, who'd survived her own abusive marriage, discreetly began filming, her jaw tight with recognition of what was unfolding. Marcus turned, finally looking directly at Elena. Which is why tonight I'd like to address something that's been unresolved. Gasps rippled through the room. Elena froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a crisp manila envelope. Elena, he said loudly, clearly, this marriage was a mistake. You've been an anchor when I needed a partner. So let's make this simple. He walked toward her table, every eye in the room following, phones lifted. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, is he serious?" Marcus stopped 6 feet from her table, then with sudden violence threw the envelope forward. It skidded across the polished wood surface, knocked over Elena's water glass with a sharp clink, and landed on her plate with a wet slap. Water spread across the white tablecloth like spilled tears. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Filed 2 days ago. Sign it. Move on. Marcus turned slightly, casually signaling a nearby waiter. "Can we get this cleaned up?" he said, gesturing dismissively at Elena's water-soaked table, as if addressing a minor spill. Not the destruction of a marriage. Elena stared at the envelope through blurred vision, the words barely readable through spreading water. Petition for dissolution of marriage filed November 20th. Her breath shattered. She felt like she was falling through the floor. Slowly, she raised her eyes to him. You filed without telling me? Why would I?" Marcus said, his voice growing louder, more theatrical. "You've always been cheap, Elena. Cheap clothes, cheap taste, cheap dreams. You're an embarrassment to everything I've built. This is just paperwork making official what's been true for months. You don't belong in my world." Her throat closed. The baby pushed hard against her ribs, reacting to her panic. Guests murmured. Then, horrifyingly, 2 of Marcus's younger colleagues at the main table let out uncomfortable laughs, the nervous kind that escape when people don't know how to process public cruelty. The laughter died instantly when Gerald, the older executive, shot them a withering look that could have frozen fire. Phones rose higher. Across the room, Sandra's hand covered her mouth. Tasha's eyes blazed with fury. Elena felt tears escape despite her effort to hold them back. My baby deserved better than this moment, she thought. From the corner, Malik discreetly angled his phone, camera recording, capturing the full scene. Marcus standing over a pregnant woman, divorce papers on her dinner plate, humiliation framed by crystal chandeliers. Lila remained seated at her table, sipping wine, expression carefully neutral. Someone at the main table spoke up, a woman in her 50s. "Marcus, this is highly inappropriate." "It's honest," Marcus interrupted. "And honesty is what successful people value." Elena stood slowly, gripping the edge of the table to steady herself. Her legs shook. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Why here? Why now?" Marcus shrugged. "Because I can. Because I'm done pretending you belong in my world." And with those words, something in her heart cracked so loudly she swore others could hear it. The room fell into stunned silence. Then a voice cut through. "That's enough." Everyone turned. Sandra stood, her face pale but her voice steady. "Marcus, you're making a spectacle of cruelty. This isn't strength, it's cowardice." "Excuse me?" Marcus snapped. "You heard me," Sandra said. "I've worked with you for 3 years. And this? This is the lowest I've ever seen anyone stoop." Tasha stood next. "Elena helped you when you had nothing. Literally nothing. And this is how you repay her?" Marcus's face flushed with anger. "Who the hell are you to lecture me?" "Someone with a conscience," Tasha shot back. Gerald, the host, stepped forward, visibly uncomfortable. "Marcus, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No," Elena said quietly. Every head turned toward her. She wiped her tears, standing a little straighter despite the weight on her belly. "I'll go, but I want everyone here to remember this moment, to remember what you chose to do." Her voice wavered, but it didn't break. She picked up the envelope, tucked it under her arm, and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the suddenly silent hall. The chandeliers blurred into streaks of gold. Someone's quiet apology followed her. The thick scent of rosemary steak turned sour in her stomach. She pushed open the heavy double doors and finally allowed herself to cry fully. She didn't know that inside the room, 3 separate phones were still recording. Malik, Tasha, and one guest who found the entire scene disturbing had captured every word, every gesture, every moment of Marcus's cruelty. By 8:21 p.m., Elena stood outside in the cold night air, her breath visible in soft clouds. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands. A new message waited. "Elena, this is Attorney Cole Winters. I represent your late father's estate. Emergency legal protections have been activated. Please call me immediately, no matter how late. You are not alone." She stared at the message, heart pounding. Another message arrived seconds later. This one from Malik. I recorded everything. You'll want this for court. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And then a third message from a number she didn't recognize. Miss Harrington, your father anticipated this exact scenario. Call Attorney Winters. The war begins now. The revenge had already been set in motion long before Marcus realized he'd made a fatal mistake. Elena's hands stopped shaking. For the first time in months, she felt something other than fear. She felt ready. Elena stepped into the cold night air with tears drying stiff on her cheeks and her breath catching in the chill. The world outside Northside Estates felt strangely quiet compared to the humiliation she just walked through. The soft glow of the street lamps made the pavement gleam, and somewhere nearby, sprinklers clicked on with a rhythmic hiss. Her dress clung to her skin. She felt frozen from the inside out. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Tasha appeared beside her first, having rushed out through a side exit. I got you, she whispered, wrapping her coat around Elena's shoulders. Let's get you out of here. Elena pulled out her phone with trembling hands, pressed it against her chest, and whispered to herself, I just want my baby safe. Please just let my baby be safe. As if in answer, her phone buzzed immediately in her hand, a sharp vibration that made her jump. A text message from an unknown number lit the screen. Tasha appeared beside her, having rushed out through a side exit. I got you, she whispered, wrapping her coat around Elena's shoulders. What is it? What's wrong? Sandra emerged moments later, breathless. Elena, I'm so sorry. I tried to warn you. You did, Elena managed. I had to see it for myself. Her phone buzzed insistently. She pulled it from her purse with shaking fingers. 3 missed calls from an unknown number, 1 voicemail, and that text message. Attorney Cole Winters. Emergency legal protections have been activated. Who's Cole Winters? Tasha asked, reading over her shoulder. I don't know, Elena whispered. The message says he represents my father's estate. Sandra's eyes widened. Your father had an estate? Before Elena could answer, her phone rang again. The same unknown number. She stared at it, heart racing. Finally, she pressed answer and lifted the phone to her ear. Elena? A steady male voice came through, calm but urgent. My name is Attorney Cole Winters. I apologize for calling so late, but circumstances require immediate action. I don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. How did you get my number? Your father gave it to me 7 years ago, Cole replied gently, along with very specific instructions about when to contact you. Tonight's events, what Mr. Hale did at that dinner triggered legal protections your father put in place before his death. Elena's legs felt weak. Tasha steadied her. My father? But he died 2 years ago. I know, Cole said. I was his attorney. And before he passed, he anticipated that your husband might one day reveal his true character. He created contingency plans, legal mechanisms designed to protect you if you were ever publicly humiliated or abandoned. The words sounded surreal. Elena leaned against Tasha, trying to process. What kind of protections? It's complicated to explain over the phone, Cole said. And it's now 8:43 p.m. I know you've been through trauma tonight, but I need you to come to my office. I have documents you must see. Decisions that need to be made within the next 12 hours. 12 hours? Elena echoed. Why so fast? Because Marcus will attempt to access and drain your joint accounts first thing Monday morning, Cole said. I have intelligence suggesting he's already planned it. We need to file protective orders before the banks open. Sandra stepped closer, whispering, He's right. I overheard Marcus tell Lila he'd clean out the joint account this weekend. Elena's breath caught. That account held the $12,000 her grandmother had left her when she passed last year. It was all she had. Miss Rivers? Cole prompted. Are you still there? Yes, she whispered. Where's your office? 743 7th Street, 2nd floor, Cole and Winters Family Law. I'll be here all night if necessary. Tasha took the phone gently from Elena's hand. Mr. Winters? This is Elena's friend Tasha. She's in shock right now. Can you give us 30 minutes to get her some water? Maybe some food? Of course, Cole said. But please, come as soon as you can. Time is our enemy right now. The call ended. Elena stood in the cold parking lot, the distant sound of the dinner party still audible through the thick walls of Northside Estates. Laughter, music, as if nothing had happened. It was 8:52 p.m. when they finally got into Tasha's old Civic. Sandra sat in the back, making phone calls to gather more evidence from coworkers who'd witnessed the scene. They drove through quiet streets, the heater rattling in the old car. Elena stared out the window, watching streetlights blur past. Her mind kept replaying Marcus's face, the cold satisfaction when he dropped those papers on her plate, the way he'd said, "Because I can." A memory surfaced, unbidden. Her father's study. She'd been 22, newly in love, glowing with hope. Charles Harrington had sat across from her, his expression serious in a way that made her uncomfortable. "Elena," he'd said slowly, "I need you to understand something about wealth. It changes people. Not immediately, but gradually, like rust. Dad, Marcus isn't like that. Perhaps not now," her father had interrupted gently. "But success tests character in ways poverty never does. Promise me you'll let me put protections in place, legal safeguards. Not because I don't trust your judgment, but because I love you." She'd agreed, thinking it was just her father's overprotectiveness. She'd signed papers she barely read, trusting him completely. Now, driving through the dark streets toward a lawyer's office, she finally understood. Her father had known. At 9:27 p.m., they reached a modest brick building on 7th Street. A warm light glowed from a second-floor window. The sign outside read, "Cole and Winters, Family and Corporate Law." Inside, the smell of coffee mixed with old books and lemon cleaner. A ticking wall clock echoed in the otherwise silent waiting room. Attorney Cole Winters stood waiting by a wooden desk, a man in his early 40s, with calm eyes, rolled-up sleeves, and a stack of files spread open. He looked exactly like someone who'd been working long past business hours. "Miss Rivers," he said, offering his hand, "I'm sorry we meet under such painful circumstances." Elena shook it numbly. Tasha and Sandra flanked her like shields as they all sat down. Cole poured her a glass of water, then settled into his chair. "Let me start by explaining who I am and why tonight's events gave me legal authority to contact you." He opened a thick file labeled Harrington Holdings, Protective Trust Arrangements, Elena H. Rivers. "Your father, Charles Harrington, was one of the most meticulous estate planners I've ever worked with," Cole said. "When you married Marcus Hale 5 years ago, your father required as a condition of his blessing that Marcus sign a revised marital agreement." Elena frowned. "Marcus signed a prenup?" "He signed what he thought was standard paperwork," Cole corrected. "In reality, it was a comprehensive protection contract. Your father embedded a clause that would activate if you were ever publicly humiliated, financially endangered, or emotionally abandoned by your spouse." He slid a document across the desk. "This is the original agreement Marcus signed. Page 7, Section 4, Subsection B." Elena read slowly, her eyes widening. "If the spouse, Marcus Hale, engages in public humiliation, documented infidelity, or financial abandonment of the protected party, Elena Harrington Rivers, the following consequences shall immediately activate: 1. Freeze of all joint financial accounts. 2. Redirection of 35% of spouse's future earnings for a period of 10 years. 3. Misconduct penalties calculated at $850,000 base amount plus damages." Tasha leaned over her shoulder, jaw dropping. "Wait, he signed away 35% of his future income?" "He did," Cole confirmed, "though I doubt he read it carefully. Most people don't. Your father specifically structured this as a misconduct penalty tied to documented marital tort infidelity combined with emotional abuse and public humiliation," Cole explained, leaning forward. "In this jurisdiction, such penalties are enforceable when there's clear documented evidence of intentional harm to the marriage, which, thanks to tonight and the investigators' 6-month surveillance, we have in overwhelming abundance," Sandra whispered. That's career-ending. "It's designed to be consequence-appropriate," Cole said. "Your father believed that if a man chooses to humiliate his wife publicly, he should bear public consequences." Elena felt tears forming again, but this time they weren't from pain. "My father did this? Before he died? He spent 6 months designing it," Cole said softly. "He told me, if my daughter is ever treated as less than she deserves, I want the man who does it to learn a lesson he'll never forget." Those were his exact words. The room fell silent except for the ticking clock, Cole continued. "After your father passed 2 years ago, I was appointed as the executor with specific monitoring duties. 6 months ago, I became concerned about Marcus's behavior. I hired a private investigator, David Chen, former LAPD, very discreet to document any potential violations of the marital agreement. He pulled out another folder. Photographs spilled across the desk. Marcus and Lila at restaurants, entering a hotel, credit card statements for expensive gifts. Mr. Chen documented 17 separate incidents over 6 months, Cole said. But we needed a clear, public threshold violation to legally activate the protections. Tonight, at approximately 8:21 p.m., that threshold was definitively met. He turned his laptop screen toward them. Malik's video played crystal clear, time-stamped, showing Marcus throwing divorce papers onto Elena's plate while calling their marriage a mistake. This footage, Cole said quietly, combined with the investigator's reports, gives us overwhelming legal grounds to proceed. Elena stared at the screen, watching herself cry, watching Marcus walk away. She felt Tasha's hand squeeze hers. "What happens now?" Elena asked. Cole pulled out a fresh legal pad. "First, I need your consent to activate the protections. If you agree, I'll file emergency motions first thing Monday morning when the courts open at 8 a.m. "What kind of motions?" "A freeze order on all joint accounts to prevent asset depletion," Cole listed. "A petition to enforce the marital contract Marcus signed, a request for misconduct penalties, and a temporary restraining order preventing him from contacting or harassing you." "How long will this take?" Sandra asked. "For the freeze order and restraining order? Probably approved by Monday afternoon if the judge sees this video," Cole said. "For the full contract, enforcement, and penalties? That requires a formal hearing. Maybe 2 to 3 weeks." Elena's mind spun. "And he doesn't know any of this is coming?" "Not yet," Cole said. "By the time he realizes what's happening, his accounts will be frozen and his assets will be under court supervision." Tasha let out a low whistle. His entire world is about to flip. Cole met Elena's eyes seriously. "Miss Rivers, I need you to understand something. This isn't revenge. This is enforcement of an agreement Marcus voluntarily signed. But it will be public. It will be painful for him. And he will fight back aggressively." "I don't want revenge," Elena whispered, her hand moving to her belly. "I just want my baby safe. I want to know we'll be okay." "You will be," Cole said gently. "Your father made sure of it. He placed one final document before her, a consent form. If you sign this," he said quietly, "the first legal move becomes yours. Marcus humiliated you publicly. Your father's protections allow you to respond through the courts, legally and powerfully." Elena held the pen, hand trembling. The clock read 10:17 p.m. By sunrise Monday, Marcus's perfect life would begin to crack. She signed. The apartment felt heavier than usual when Elena finally returned home that night, as if the humiliation from the dinner had seeped into the walls and settled in the air. She sat on the edge of her small bed, blanket pulled around her waist, listening to the faint hum of the old radiator. Her phone lay on the pillow beside her, buzzing every few minutes with messages and missed calls she didn't have the strength to answer yet. Tasha had stayed with her, sleeping on the couch. Sandra had gone home but promised to send more documentation by morning. Cole had sent them away around 11:30 p.m., saying he'd work through the night preparing the Monday morning filings. Elena hadn't slept. She'd stared at the ceiling, feeling her baby move inside her, wondering how life had brought her to this moment. It was just after 7:08 a.m. On Sunday morning, when her phone finally stopped buzzing and started ringing persistently, she picked it up. Marcus. 17 missed calls since last night. She'd ignored all of them. Now his name flashed across the screen again, urgent and demanding. Against her better judgment, or maybe because she needed to hear his voice one more time to confirm what she already knew, she answered. "Elena, where the hell have you been?" His voice was sharp, irritated, not apologetic. "You made a scene last night." "I made a scene?" The words came out before she could stop them. "You walked out in the middle of an important dinner," he snapped. "Do you know how that made me look?" Elena's chest tightened. Even now, after everything, he was thinking about his image. "You threw divorce papers at me in front of everyone, Marcus." "I was trying to be efficient," he said, as if that explained everything. "We both knew this wasn't working. I just made it official. You humiliated me." "Oh, stop being dramatic." She could almost hear him rolling his eyes. "Look, we need to talk about logistics. I'll need you to sign some additional financial documents. There's money in the joint account we need to split before..." "Before what?" Elena interrupted. Before you drain it, silence. Then, carefully, who have you been talking to? Does it matter? Elena, don't do anything stupid. We can handle this like adults. His tone shifted, becoming almost patronizing. I know you're upset, but let's be practical. You don't have the resources to fight me on this. Something in his voice, the casual certainty that she was powerless, ignited a small flame in her chest. We'll see, she said quietly. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'll talk to you through my attorney. She hung up. Her hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from a strange new feeling she didn't quite recognize yet. Strength. Tasha appeared in the doorway, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. Was that him? Yeah. What did he want? To split the joint account, Elena said, before I can access it. Tasha set down the coffee and pulled out her laptop. Good thing we're about to give Cole everything he needs to freeze it first. For the next 2 hours, they worked. Tasha had kept meticulous records, every suspicious text she'd noticed on Marcus's phone when he left it unlocked at their apartment months ago. Every late-night explanation that didn't add up, every time he'd canceled plans with Elena to work late. By 9:34 a.m., Sandra arrived with a flash drive. I couldn't sleep, she said, handing it to Elena. So I went through my work emails and pulled everything I could find. Messages Marcus sent about you. Conversations where he complained about you holding him back. Company credit card statements showing dinners with Lila that he expensed as client development. Elena plugged the flash drive into Tasha's laptop. Files opened, dozens of them. Email dated 4 months ago, Marcus to a colleague. My wife doesn't understand the lifestyle I'm building. She's still shopping at thrift stores like we're broke. It's embarrassing. Another email, 2 months ago. Lila gets it. She understands ambition. Some people are meant to rise, and some people just aren't. Text message, thread recovered from company phone logs, Marcus. Elena thinks I'm working late again. Lila, does she suspect? Marcus, no. She trusts too much. Elena's throat burned. She'd known about the affair intellectually since yesterday, but seeing the words, the casual cruelty, the mockery of her trust made it viscerally real. Tasha placed a hand on her shoulder. Breathe, girl. We're using this. All of it. By 10:47 a.m., they had compiled everything into organized folders. Text messages, 47 screenshots. Emails, 23 work emails, 15 personal. Photos, 12 of Marcus and Lila. Credit card statements, 8 months of suspicious charges. Hotel receipts, 3 confirmed overnight stays. Video. Footage, Malik's dinner recording, plus Tasha's apartment confrontation. Sandra helped them create a timeline document showing how Marcus's behavior had escalated over 6 months from emotional distance to open affair to public humiliation. At 11:15 a.m., Elena's phone buzzed. A message from Cole. Good morning. How are you holding up? I'm at the office. Can you bring any additional evidence you've gathered? I want to include everything in tomorrow's filing. Elena replied. We have a lot. Coming now. They drove to Cole's office through quiet Sunday streets. The city felt peaceful, unaware that by tomorrow morning, a legal storm would begin. When they arrived at 12:03 p.m., Cole looked exhausted but focused. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Empty coffee cups littered his desk. Legal pads filled with notes covered every surface. You've been here all night, Elena observed. Your father paid me a retainer specifically for this scenario, Cole said with a small smile. I'm not about to waste it. He led them to a conference room where a printer hummed steadily, churning out document after document. This, he said, gesturing to a 3-inch thick stack, is the preliminary filing. Emergency motion for asset freeze, petition to enforce the marital agreement, request for misconduct penalties, and application for temporary restraining order. He accepted the flash drive from Sandra. What's on here? Everything, Sandra said. Work emails, credit card statements, message logs, all time-stamped and sourced. Cole plugged it in, his expression growing more serious as he reviewed each file. Finally, he looked up. This is excellent evidence. Very thorough. He glanced at Elena. With this documentation, I can request that the misconduct penalty be increased. Increased from what? Elena asked. The base penalty in your father's contract is $850,000, Cole explained. But there's a provision allowing for additional damages if the misconduct is particularly egregious or involves documented infidelity. With this evidence of a sustained affair, hotel stays, and financial deception, we could argue for $1.2 million. Tasha's eyes widened. That would destroy him. It would hold him accountable, Cole corrected gently. There's a difference. Elena stared at the stack of documents, at the evidence of Marcus's betrayal spread across the table. She thought about the years she'd spent helping him, believing in him, sacrificing for him. She thought about last night standing in front of all those people, humiliated while pregnant with his child. Do it, she said quietly. Request the full amount. Cole nodded. I'll include all the evidence and file tomorrow at 8 a.m. when the courthouse opens. For the next hour, they reviewed everything. Cole explained each document, what it meant, what the likely outcomes were. He prepared Elena for what would happen over the next few weeks: hearings, depositions, Marcus's inevitable counterattack. He'll hire an expensive attorney, Cole warned. He'll claim you're vindictive, that you're using your pregnancy for sympathy, that this is all a misunderstanding. Be prepared for that. I don't care what he says anymore, Elena replied. Her voice was steady now, stronger than it had been in months. I just want justice, and I want my child protected. Sandra checked her watch. I should go. I have a shift tonight. But Elena, call me if you need anything. I'll testify if it comes to that. After Sandra left, Cole walked Elena and Tasha through the next 48 hours. Monday morning, I file at 8 a.m., he said. By 10 a.m., the clerk should have processed it. By noon, if the judge grants emergency review, which I believe he will, given the video evidence, the freeze order will be active. When does Marcus find out? Tasha asked. When he tries to access the accounts and discovers they're locked, Cole said. Probably Monday afternoon. He'll get official notice by courier Monday evening. And then? Then he'll panic, Cole said simply. He'll call his bank, his attorney, possibly you. He'll demand explanations. He'll threaten legal action. But by then, it will be too late. The court will have control. Elena absorbed this, feeling a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. Part of her still loved the man Marcus used to be, but that man was gone. What remained was someone who'd looked her in the eye and called their marriage a mistake while she carried his child. At 2:47 p.m., as they prepared to leave, Cole placed a hand gently on Elena's shoulder. Your father would be proud of you, he said. He always said you were stronger than you believed. I think tonight proved him right. Elena's eyes filled with tears, good tears this time. I miss him. He knew, Cole said softly. He knew one day you'd need this strength. That's why he prepared everything so carefully. As they drove home, Elena's phone buzzed again. Another call from Marcus. She didn't answer. She would never answer his calls again. By tomorrow afternoon, he'd understand why. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of morning where fog clung to the streets and made everything feel muted and uncertain. Elena woke at 6:30 a.m., her body aching, her mind restless. She knew Cole would be at the courthouse in 90 minutes, filing papers that would change everything. The emergency hearing had been scheduled for Tuesday afternoon, 24 hours away. Tasha made breakfast scrambled eggs from the last 3 eggs in Elena's fridge. Toast, weak coffee. They ate in silence, both too nervous to say much. At 7:45 a.m., Elena's phone buzzed. Cole, heading to courthouse now. We'll update you as soon as filings are processed. Stay strong. By 8:52 a.m., another message. Filed. Clerk accepted all documents. Emergency hearing scheduled for 2 p.m. today. Judge Ramirez assigned. That's good, he's fair and doesn't tolerate misconduct. Elena exhaled slowly. It was real now. The wheels were turning. At 10:17 a.m., Cole called. The freeze order was granted, he said, and she could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Judge reviewed it within 2 hours. As of 30 minutes ago, all joint accounts are under court supervision. Marcus can't access them without judicial approval. How much was in there? Elena asked. Checking the bank records now. $47,300 total across 2 accounts. The bulk of it is the inheritance from your grandmother, plus some money you deposited over the years. Marcus contributed about $8,000. Elena felt relief flood through her. That money was safe. Her baby was safe. What happens next? She asked. The hearing tomorrow at 2 p.m. will determine temporary measures, restraining order, preliminary penalty assessment, timeline for full proceedings. You don't need to attend if you're not comfortable, but I recommend it. Seeing you pregnant, composed, present will help our case. Elena looked at Tasha, who nodded firmly. I'll be there, Elena said. At 12:34 p.m., they arrived at the courthouse, a large limestone building downtown, with marble steps and heavy wooden doors. Elena wore a simple gray dress Tasha had brought her, one that clearly showed her pregnant belly. Cole met them in the hallway outside courtroom 4C. Marcus's attorney just arrived, he said quietly. Gary Mitchell. Expensive, aggressive, likes to bully. Don't let him intimidate you. Has Marcus seen the freeze order yet? Elena asked. He knows, Cole said. His attorney called my office 20 minutes ago, threatening to file counter motions for harassment. I told him to save his theatrics for the judge. Tuesday afternoon arrived tense and cold. Elena had barely slept, running through every possible outcome in her mind. By 1:30 p.m., she and Tasha were standing in the courthouse hallway outside courtroom 4C, Cole reviewing his notes beside them. At exactly 2 p.m., the bailiff called, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Ramirez." Judge Ramirez entered a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen every courtroom trick imaginable. She settled into her seat and reviewed the documents before her. This is an emergency hearing regarding protective measures in the matter of Rivers v. Hale, she said. Mr. Winters, you filed on behalf of the petitioner? Cole stood. Yes, Your Honor. And Mr. Mitchell, you represent Mr. Hale? A tall man in an expensive suit stood. I do, Your Honor, and I'd like to state for the record that this entire proceeding is premature and punitive. You'll have your chance to argue, Judge Ramirez interrupted. Mr. Winters, present your case. Cole approached the bench. Your Honor, this case involves enforcement of a marital agreement signed by both parties 5 years ago. The agreement contains specific protections for Mrs. Rivers if her spouse engages in public humiliation or abandonment. 3 nights ago, Mr. Hale served divorce papers to his pregnant wife during a public dinner in front of more than 20 witnesses. He played Malik's video on the courtroom screen. The room fell silent as Marcus's voice echoed. This marriage was a mistake. You've been an anchor when I needed a partner. Elena watched Judge Ramirez's expression harden. When the video ended, Cole continued. Additionally, our investigation reveals a sustained affair with a colleague, documented financial deception, and statements indicating premeditated intent to humiliate Mrs. Rivers publicly. He submitted the evidence folders, emails, texts, photos, credit card statements. Your Honor, Cole said. The marital agreement clearly states that such conduct triggers immediate financial protections and penalties. We're requesting enforcement of the agreement, continuation of the asset freeze, and a temporary restraining order preventing Mr. Hale from contacting Mrs. Rivers. Judge Ramirez turned to Marcus's attorney. Mr. Mitchell, your response? Gary Mitchell stood smoothly. Your Honor, while my client's method of communication may have been inelegant, the substance is straightforward: a couple deciding to divorce. The so-called marital agreement, Mrs. Rivers references, is a standard prenuptial document that my client signed under duress 5 years ago when he was financially dependent on her family. Elena's eyes widened. That was a lie. Cole stood immediately. Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Hale was never financially dependent on Mrs. Rivers's family. In fact, Mrs. Rivers's relationship to the Harrington family was not disclosed to Mr. Hale until after the marriage. He signed the agreement believing it was standard legal paperwork. Then how is this agreement valid? Judge Ramirez asked. Because Mr. Hale had access to independent legal counsel and chose not to use it, Cole explained. The agreement is a standard prenuptial contract with protective clauses. All signatures are notarized. All disclosures were made. Mr. Hale simply didn't read carefully. Judge Ramirez studied the contract. Mr. Mitchell, did your client read this agreement before signing? Mitchell hesitated. Your Honor, we'd need to depose Mr. Hale to determine, is your client present? The judge interrupted. He is, Your Honor. Then let's ask him directly. Bailiff, have Mr. Hale approach. Marcus stood from the gallery, his face pale. He walked to the defendant's table, hands clenched. Mr. Hale, Judge Ramirez said, did you read this marital agreement before signing it 5 years ago? Marcus's jaw tightened. I reviewed it briefly. Briefly? I trusted that it was standard paperwork. My fiance's father presented it as a formality. Did you hire an attorney to review it? No. Were you offered the opportunity to have an attorney review it? Silence. Mr. Hale? The judge prompted. Yes, Marcus admitted quietly. I was told I could have independent counsel review it, but you chose not to? I didn't think it was necessary. Judge Ramirez's expression was unreadable. So you signed a legal contract without reading it carefully and without consulting an attorney, despite being offered both opportunities? Yes. And now you claim duress? Mitchell interjected. Your Honor, my client was eager to marry Mrs. Rivers. The pressure to sign was implicit. Implicit pressure is not legal duress, Mr. Mitchell, Judge Ramirez said sharply. It sounds like your client made a poor decision and is now facing the consequences. She reviewed the video again, her expression growing sterner. Mr. Hale, she said, I've reviewed the evidence presented today. The video clearly shows you humiliating your pregnant wife in a public setting. The text messages and emails suggest premeditation. The credit card statements indicate financial deception. Marcus opened his mouth, but the judge raised a hand. I'm granting the petitioner's request, she said. The asset freeze remains in place. A temporary restraining order is issued preventing Mr. Hale from contacting Mrs. Rivers except through legal counsel. And I'm scheduling a full evidentiary hearing in 3 weeks to determine enforcement of the marital agreement and calculation of penalties. Mitchell stood. Your Honor, this is excessive. This is consequence appropriate, Mr. Mitchell, Judge Ramirez said. Your client made choices. Now he'll live with them. She struck her gavel once. The hearing ended at 2:47 p.m. As Elena stood to leave, she saw Marcus across the courtroom. His face was ashen, his hands shook. The confident, cruel man from Saturday night was gone. What remained looked small and frightened. Their eyes met for just a moment. Then Elena turned and walked away. Outside the courthouse, Cole exhaled deeply. That went better than I hoped. What happens now? Elena asked. Now we prepare for the full hearing in 3 weeks, Cole said. But the immediate protections are in place. You're safe, your money is safe, and Marcus can't come near you. As they walked down the courthouse steps, Elena felt sunlight break through the fog, literally and metaphorically. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. The woman Marcus had tried to diminish, the woman her father had always believed she could be. Strong, protected, free. 3 weeks passed like a held breath. Elena spent the time preparing, gathering more evidence, meeting with Cole, attending prenatal appointments, and slowly beginning to imagine a life without Marcus's shadow looming over her. Tasha moved in temporarily, refusing to let Elena face any of this alone. Sandra checked in daily, providing updates about the chaos unfolding at Marcus's company as word of the lawsuit spread. Investors are nervous, Sandra reported one afternoon. The video leaked somehow, probably from someone at the dinner. It's all over LinkedIn. Marcus's professional reputation is tanking. Elena felt no satisfaction in that, just a quiet certainty that truth eventually surfaced. By the time the full evidentiary hearing arrived, a cold Thursday morning in early December, Elena was ready. The courthouse hallway felt colder than it should have, the kind of cold that settled into Elena's bones and made her fingers stiff despite wearing gloves. The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly, flickering every few seconds as if the building itself was tired of holding so many broken stories inside its walls. She stood beside Cole, clutching a folder containing witness statements. Her throat was tight, but not from fear, more from the weight of knowing this moment would define her future forever. Reporters whispered in small clusters. A camera clicked. Someone murmured, "That's her, the wife from the video that went viral." Elena kept her eyes forward. "Are you ready?" Cole asked gently. "No," she whispered, "but I'm here." The courtroom doors swung open at 8:47 a.m., and immediately a wave of murmurs rose. Marcus entered wearing a dark tailored suit and a silver Rolex that caught the overhead lights, still projecting success even as his world crumbled. His attorney, Gary Mitchell, walked beside him, carrying an expensive briefcase. Lila wasn't with him. According to Sandra, she distanced herself the moment the legal trouble began, claiming she'd been deceived about Marcus's marital status. When Marcus spotted Elena, his jaw clenched. "Elena?" he said tightly. "This doesn't have to be so adversarial." Cole stepped between them. "Mr. Hale, You're under a restraining order. Please maintain distance. Marcus's face flushed, but he walked to his table without another word. Court came to order at 9:03 a.m. Judge Ramirez entered, her expression as serious as Elena remembered. Let's begin, she said. This is a full evidentiary hearing regarding enforcement of a marital agreement and assessment of damages in Rivers versus Hale. Elena sat on the wooden bench behind Cole's table, the surface hard beneath her. The baby shifted inside her, 8 months along now, her belly prominent and undeniable. She rubbed her stomach gently, a habit that had become both comfort and reminder. Cole began methodically. Your Honor, over the past 3 weeks, we've compiled comprehensive evidence documenting Mr. Hale's violations of the marital agreement. I'd like to present this chronologically. For the next 90 minutes, the courtroom watched Marcus's character dissected piece by piece. Cole showed the dinner video again, this time with audio enhancements that made every cruel word crystal clear. He presented the text messages between Marcus and Lila, read aloud by a court clerk. She still thinks I'm working late, so gullible. When do you finally leave her? After the investor dinner. I'll make it clean in public. She won't fight back. Gasps filled the courtroom. Cole submitted the credit card statements, $3,200 for a diamond bracelet Lila was photographed wearing, $1,800 for a hotel suite, $500 for roses delivered to Lila's apartment. He called Sandra as a witness. Sandra testified about Marcus's behavior at work, the bragging about upgrading from his wife, the open disrespect. The comments about Elena being dead weight. He called Malik, who explained how he'd been hired to manage tech for the dinner and witnessed the entire humiliation firsthand. Did Mr. Hale seem remorseful? Cole asked. No, Malik said quietly. He seemed satisfied. Finally, Cole played Tasha's recording from the apartment, Marcus's voice sharp and cutting as he told Elena not to embarrass him. By 11:34 a.m., Marcus looked physically ill. His attorney had objected repeatedly, but Judge Ramirez overruled each time. The evidence is relevant, Mr. Mitchell, she said. Continue, Mr. Winters. When it was Gary Mitchell's turn, he stood confidently, but Elena could see the cracks forming. Your Honor, Mitchell began. While my client's communication style may have been flawed, the substance remains true. This was a marriage that had run its course. Mr. Hale fulfilled his financial obligations during the marriage. Mrs. Rivers is attempting to weaponize a legal document to extract unwarranted penalties. Cole stood immediately. Objection. Mr. Hale signed an agreement that explicitly outlined consequences for his exact behavior. This isn't weaponization, it's enforcement. Sustained, Judge Ramirez said. Mr. Mitchell, the agreement is clear. Your client violated specific terms. The question is the extent of damages, not whether damages are warranted. Mitchell pivoted. Your Honor, the requested penalties are punitive to the point of cruelty. $1.2 million would devastate my client's financial future. Perhaps Mr. Hale should have considered that before humiliating his pregnant wife publicly, Judge Ramirez said dryly. Elena felt a small surge of validation. Mitchell called Marcus to testify. Marcus took the stand at 12:18 p.m., his confidence visibly shaken. Mitchell led him through softball questions, how hard he'd worked, how stressful his career was, how the marriage had deteriorated gradually. But when Cole cross-examined, the facade crumbled. Mr. Hale, Cole said, when did you file the divorce papers you served to Mrs. Rivers? 2 days before the dinner. So you filed for divorce without informing your wife? I was planning to tell her. By throwing papers at her during a public event? Marcus's jaw tightened. I thought it would be cleaner than a private argument. Cleaner for whom? Silence. Mr. Hale. Did you drain any joint accounts before my client obtained the freeze order? I withdrew some money for living expenses. How much? $7,000. From an account your wife contributed to. It was a joint account, which you attempted to empty before she could access it, Cole said. Is that correct? Marcus hesitated. I needed funds for legal representation. So you took money your wife had deposited money from her deceased grandmother's inheritance to hire an attorney to fight her? The courtroom was silent. Yes, Marcus admitted quietly. Judge Ramirez leaned forward. Mr. Hale, I've heard enough. She reviewed her notes for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice measured but firm. This court finds that Mr. Hale willfully and knowingly violated the terms of the marital agreement signed 5 years ago. The evidence of public humiliation is irrefutable. The evidence of infidelity is documented. The evidence of financial manipulation is clear. Marcus's face went pale. Therefore, Judge Ramirez continued, this court orders the following. First, enforcement of the marital agreement's penalty clause. Mr. Hale will pay $1.2 million in misconduct damages, payable over 12 months with the first payment due within 30 days. Mitchell shot to his feet. Your Honor. I'm not finished, the judge said sharply. Second, Mr. Hale will redirect 35% of his gross income to Mrs. Rivers for a period of 10 years, as specified in the agreement. Third, all joint assets will be divided 70-30 inches Mrs. Rivers' favor due to Mr. Hale's attempted asset depletion. Your Honor, this is financial ruin, Mitchell protested. This is consequence, Judge Ramirez said. Mr. Hale made a series of choices. He chose to betray his wife. He chose to humiliate her publicly. He chose to attempt financial manipulation. Now he will live with those choices. She struck her gavel. The hearing concluded at 1:52 p.m. Marcus sat frozen, his face ashen, as the courtroom emptied around him. Mitchell packed his briefcase with sharp, angry movements, already calculating appeals that would likely fail. Elena stood slowly, Tasha and Cole beside her. She glanced back once at Marcus, really looked at him. He was crying. Not the dignified tears of remorse, but the broken, desperate tears of someone who'd finally realized what he'd lost. Their eyes met. Elena felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just a quiet closing of a chapter she'd outgrown. She turned and walked out of the courtroom, slow and steady, the kind of walk a woman earned through fire. Outside, cold December air stung her cheeks. Reporters gathered, but Cole waved them off. How do you feel? Tasha asked softly. Free, Elena said simply. And she meant it. 12 months had passed like seasons shifting slowly at first, then all at once. Sunlight poured through the tall skylights of the renovated warehouse on a bright Tuesday morning in December, warm and bright, washing over the polished floors like a quiet blessing. The air smelled of new paint and fresh flowers arranged in the lobby, a clean beginning. Soft music played from hidden speakers, gentle piano notes, that steadied Elena's breathing as she stood near the entrance doors, her 11-month-old daughter Sophia resting against her shoulder. It had taken an entire year to arrive at this day, and still, her heart fluttered with something that felt like disbelief in peace. The foundation banner hung proudly across the front wall. Harrington Women's Support Foundation. She never thought her life would lead here. Tasha stood beside her, wearing a bright red blazer that screamed confidence. Now the foundation's director of community outreach. Girl, she whispered, nudging Elena's arm, you look like a CEO on a magazine cover. Elena laughed softly. I'm just trying not to trip during the ribbon cutting. You survived a public divorce while pregnant, Tasha shot back. You can handle walking 10 feet. The past year had been a marathon, not a sprint. After the court victory in December, Elena had given birth to Sophia in mid-January, a healthy, beautiful girl with her father's dark hair and her mother's quiet strength. Marcus had signed away his parental rights 3 months later, choosing to avoid responsibility rather than face his daughter. Elena had been relieved. By March, the first installment of Marcus's penalty payment had arrived, $100,000. Elena had used it to rent a proper apartment, pay medical bills, and begin consulting with nonprofit advisors about starting a foundation. By June, the second and third payments allowed her to lease this warehouse space, hire staff, and begin renovations. By September, they'd opened their doors to their first clients, women escaping abusive relationships, women rebuilding after financial abandonment, women who needed legal help they couldn't afford. And now, in December, exactly 1 year after the courtroom victory, they were hosting their official grand opening. A door opened behind them, and Cole stepped in, carrying a folder. He looked the same, calm, careful, a quiet strength wrapped in a charcoal suit. Press is getting set up, he said. About 15 minutes until we begin. Elena shifted Sophia in her arms. The baby made a soft cooing sound. Thank you, Cole. For everything. You did the hard parts, he replied gently. I just followed the paperwork your father designed for moments like these. Her throat tightened, but not from sorrow, more from gratitude she could finally hold. She glanced around at the cozy space, the pastel artwork on the walls donated by local artists, the small coffee station where volunteers gathered. Lives would change in this building. Stories would be rewritten. Women would be safe. It was exactly what she once needed. A reporter poked her head through the glass doors. "Miss Rivers? We're ready when you are." "Thank you," Elena said. "I'll be right there." By the time the clock read 10:47 a.m., she stood behind the podium in the main conference room, Sophia, now in Tasha's arms, waving a tiny fist at the crowd. Gathered before her were about 60 people, volunteers, donors, reporters, and 10 women who'd already been helped by the foundation's services. The bright lights of cameras didn't shake Elena the way they used to. She took a deep breath and began. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I created this foundation because there was a time in my life when I felt very small, very alone. When I thought love meant accepting cruelty. When I believed asking for help meant admitting failure." Murmurs of recognition moved through the audience. "I learned the hard way that loving the wrong person is not a crime," she continued. "But punishing yourself for it, staying silent, accepting mistreatment, believing you deserve less that can destroy you slowly, piece by piece." She paused, glancing at her daughter. "My goal with this foundation is to ensure that no woman feels trapped because of finances, fear, or shame. There is always a path out. Sometimes it begins with one person believing you matter. Sometimes it begins with a legal document that protects you when you can't protect yourself. Sometimes it begins with a friend who refuses to let you face it alone." Her eyes found Tasha, who was wiping away tears. Sandra sat in the front row, smiling proudly. Malik stood near the back with his camera, still quietly documenting important moments. "This foundation will provide free legal consultation, emergency financial assistance, safe housing referrals, and counseling services," Elena explained. "We'll help women understand their rights, navigate divorce proceedings, and rebuild their lives with dignity." The applause began softly, then grew. "Thank you to everyone who made this possible," Elena said. "To the volunteers, the donors, the attorneys who've offered pro bono hours, and especially to the women who've already trusted us with their stories. You inspire me every day." As she stepped away from the podium, several reporters called out questions. "Miss Rivers, there are rumors your ex-husband has struggled financially this year." "I won't comment on Mr. Hale," Elena said firmly but politely. "This foundation focuses on moving forward, not looking back. Do you have any message for women in similar situations?" Elena paused, considering. "Document everything, trust your instincts, ask for help. And remember that leaving takes courage, but staying in a harmful situation takes more strength than any person should have to give. Choose yourself, choose safety, choose life." More applause. When the official ceremony ended around 11:52 a.m., Elena stepped outside into the bright December afternoon. The sun was warm despite the winter chill. She pulled her coat tighter and breathed in the cold air. That was when she saw him. Marcus stood across the courtyard near a bus stop, thinner than she remembered, wearing a wrinkled button-up and carrying a worn briefcase. The expensive suits were gone, the Rolex was gone, even the confident posture had vanished, replaced by something that looked like defeat. He'd lost his high-level position in July after investors pulled out, disturbed by the public scandal. Lila had left him in April. His luxury loft had been sold to pay legal fees. According to Sandra, he now worked at a mid-level marketing firm for a fraction of his former salary, with 35% of that immediately redirected to Elena for the next 9 years. Elena felt a strange calm settle over her shoulders, like a soft blanket. Marcus took a tentative step forward. "Elena," Tasha appeared instantly, protective. But Elena gently lifted a hand. "It's okay." Marcus approached slowly, stopping several feet away, respecting the boundaries the restraining order had taught him to observe. I saw the announcement about your foundation," he said. His voice was hoarse, uncertain. That's good. What you're doing." Elena studied him for a long moment. The man who once towered over her, who humiliated her under chandeliers, now stood small and broken in the December sunlight. "Why are you here, Marcus?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," he admitted. "I guess I wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. For what I did. For who I became." She waited, saying nothing. I lost everything, he continued. My career, my reputation, my daughter. His voice cracked on the last word. And I deserve it. I know I deserve it. Elena adjusted her coat. Sophia's soft coos drifted from inside where Tasha held her. I don't need your apology, Marcus, Elena said. Not cruelly, just honestly. I needed it a year ago. I needed it the night you threw papers at me. I needed it every time you made me feel worthless. She paused. But I don't need it anymore. I've moved on. I haven't, he whispered. I can't. That's not my responsibility, she said gently. I hope you find peace someday. I hope you learn from this. But I can't be part of that journey. She turned to walk back inside. Elena. Wait. He reached out but stopped himself, remembering he wasn't allowed to touch her. Can I at least see her? My daughter? Just once? Elena's chest tightened. She thought about Sophia, bright-eyed, giggling, innocent. She thought about the man Marcus had been and the man he'd become. You signed away your rights, she said quietly. You made that choice. I was angry. I was stupid. You were cruel, Elena corrected. And children deserve better than cruelty, even if it's regretted later. His face crumpled. Tears slipped down his cheeks, real tears this time, not manipulation. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he whispered. That's all. I'm so sorry. Elena felt something shift inside her, not forgiveness exactly, but a release, like finally setting down a weight she'd carried for too long. I believe you, she said, and I hope you find a way to forgive yourself. Then she walked back inside, slow and steady, the kind of walk a woman earned through fire, and came out whole on the other side. Cole stood waiting in the lobby. You okay? I am, Elena said, and realized she meant it completely. Through the window, she watched Marcus walk away, shoulders hunched, disappearing into the city that had once celebrated him. Tasha approached with Sophia, who reached for her mother with chubby hands. Elena took her daughter, breathing in that sweet baby smell, feeling the tiny heartbeat against her chest. Some losses really are freedom, Tasha said softly. Elena kissed Sophia's forehead. Yeah, they really are. As the afternoon sun streamed through the skylights, Elena stood surrounded by the life she'd built not from revenge, but from resilience. Not from bitterness, but from believing she deserved better. The foundation was thriving. Her daughter was healthy, her heart was healing. And somewhere in the city, a man who'd once tried to erase her was learning that some women couldn't be erased. They rose instead, stronger, wiser, free. This was the woman Marcus never saw coming, the one his cruelty created, the one his father-in-law protected before she even knew she'd need it. And the silence she left him with was the final, perfect answer to his arrogance.